Okay, here we are. All right. And the time is this on? It does not seem on. Technical difficulties, people. It's very difficult. Okay, here we are. All right. In the time of Herod, king of Judea, there was a prince named Zechariah who belonged to the priestly division of Abijah. His wife Elizabeth was also a descendant of Aaron. Both of them were righteous in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly. But they were childless because Elizabeth was not able to conceive, and they were both very old. Once, when Zechariah's division was on duty and was serving as priest before God, he was chosen by lot, according to the custom of the priesthood, to go to the temple of the Lord and burn incense. And when the time for the burning of incense came, all the assembled worshippers were praying outside. Then an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing at the right side of the altar of incense. When Zechariah saw him, he was startled and was gripped with fear. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will hear you a son, and you are to call him John. He will be a joy and delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth. For he will be great in the right of the Lord. He is never to take wine or other fermented drink, and he will be filled with the Holy Spirit even before he is born. He will bring back many of the people of Israel to the Lord of their God. And he will go before the Lord to the spirit and power of Elijah to turn the hearts of the parents to their children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord." Zechariah asked the angel, "How can I be sure of this? I am an old man, and my wife is well along in his years." The angel said to him, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and to tell you the good news. And now you will be silent and not be able to speak out the day this happens, because you did not believe my words, which will come true at their appointed time." Meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah and wondering why he stayed so long in the temple. When he came out, he could not speak to them. They realized he had seen a vision in the temple, for he kept making signs to them, but remained unable to speak. When his time of service was completed, he returned home. After this, his wife Elizabeth became pregnant and for 5 months remained in seclusion. "The Lord has done this for me," she said. In these days, he has shown his favor and taken away my disgrace among the people."
Thank you. So it is the season of Advent, and today we get to focus on hope, having a great and deep hope. And so here's a question I have for you, and that is, what are you hoping for under your tree? What are you hoping for under your, come on, you got some hope there. What are you hoping shows up under the tree around here? So I'm going to invite Christina on up. What? Christina, what's under this tree? What could it be?
For me?
What? Oh, for you? Wow. What could that be? Oh, she's doing it properly. Just so you know, this is how you unwrap a present.
Come on.
You shred it like a child.
Oh.
What is that?
Oh my goodness. You shouldn't have. Oh. Oh.
All right, what is this? Does anybody know what this sucker is? Yes. Okay, now if you find anything super cool, I want like 50%. Okay, it's a split. Right. Come on. Not to mention, I'll get 50% of your cut because if you're on someone else's property and you have your permissions done, they get 50% of what you find because you're on their land.
What?
I know. It's a whole. I know. It's kind of a raw deal in the end, you know. What? Okay. Right. Wow, that's pretty cool. Yes. Ooh, happy hunting with that. Does anybody out here actually metal detect? Right here in the front row. I know. That actually might be one of his metal detectors. Have you found anything really fantastic with it yet?
No.
The correct answer is yes, I've had a good time and I treasure those moments because that's more than anything I've found. That's the right answer, Dad. Okay. We'll try again later. How many of you guys know this show? Can you outside? Anybody see this fabulous show, The Detectorists? It's such a good show. Okay, so anyways, I love British television. And they're very big on, like, people go, are you metal detectors? And they're like, no, we are not metal detectors. This is a metal detector. We are detectorists. And I love to say, like, one, the show's hilarious, and I love all the actors that are in it. But this is what I love about detectorists. And you do see them sometimes. Like, if you, like, are up in Longview at Lake Sacagawea and they're done with, like, any kind of festival, like, the morning after 4th of July, they are all out there detecting because, like, people have lost things in their pockets. You see them super early. You just get on July 5th, get up, get a cup of coffee, and just go sit at the lake and watch the detectorists out. It's very interesting. And it's kind of cool watching people out with metal detectors because you start to, like, I don't know, they have this hope that becomes infectious. Like, you really hope they find something. Like, you start to want to see them. And there's also a whole thing about, like, if they find gold, they do a dance, right? Could you imagine finding gold at Lake Sacagawea? That'd be amazing. Anyways, but there's this, like, incredible hope in a detectorist. You know what I'm saying? They're out there going for it. And sometimes it doesn't matter the season really, but they're out there going for it. And then, like, every time that thing beeps, you got to check it because it could be the big one. You know what I mean? Like, this could be the great find, And in this show that I so much love, you can see in this picture, I love how it shows you everything underneath the ground from them. And that's what happens. It shows them they're out metal detecting and it beeps, and it's always garbage. They're always digging up garbage, but they start to treasure the garbage that they find. Like Lance treasures ring pulls. He always finds those little, like, ring pull tabs that are on, like, cans. And he starts to treasure the ring pull tabs, and he's like, oh, it's, from this. He knows his ring pulls now, and they've turned into a treasure because they've turned into, like, this moment. Is learning to love the moment. And so they're out there hunting for treasure. Every time it beeps, they got to stop and dig it up because it could be the one. But then they walk off and then they pan down and you see that they were close to something, like, super valuable, and they missed it because they gave up. They gave up and they walked away too soon. And it was just waiting for them. And so I love the hope of the detectorist. They have to check. And there's something beautiful in that, and that it also becomes contagious for anyone who's watching them. And this is the thing about hope. Hope is not something you just sit there and say, well, I really hope this happens. Hope requires an action. We say that a lot about faith, like, faith requires an action. So when you say you have faith in something, it should reflect in your actions. But hope is the same way. When we hope for something, it does require a sense of action. But today, so you can grab that next to us. Like, so hope is lived out. And if there is no action, there really is no hope. If there's no action, there really isn't hope. You're just kind of saying words at that point. And of course, we're probably, when you hear hope, how many of you guys just start thinking about Star Wars? New hope, and, like, this, like, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. You know what I mean? But there's always an action that's taken with it. So remember that there's always an action to hope, and if there's no action, there is no hope. And when we get to kick off our Advent season talking about hope, we get to see a guy who actually lost all hope. You can grab that next slide. Zechariah. Oh my goodness. This is one of my favorite stories, and I love it. Like, I get to talk about it every single year, but every year it's like, oh, okay, I can't just, like, hyper focus on the same things every single time. There's always so many cool things going on in this account. And so some things that need to be said always is the context of this story. And that is when we first get to meet Zechariah and Elizabeth, it tells us about their lineage. It tells you about their background and their lineage, right? They're Levites. So you know that there's 12 tribes of Israel, and one is the Levites. And when we go scrolling back into our Old Testament, we know that the Levites became the priestly tribe. And so it wasn't that every Levite became a priest, but they were considered a little bit of a holier people group. And so they come from the tribe of Levi. But then also the story scrolls back and tells you that not only are they both from the same tribe, they're from like this really, really long lineage to a very prominent priest. And here's the thing with how lineage works in a lot of places, you're expected to achieve at the level of your ancestors. And if you had super cool ancestors, you better not disappoint them, forever later. And so there's a lot of expectation of purity and perfection already placed upon Elizabeth and Zechariah. And so we open up with this beautiful opening. These guys are super cool. So much good should come from them. Wow. And then there's the big, huge but. It's the big, huge spin of the story. It's the plot. It's the whole conflict that has to be resolved. But they had no children. And in this time, remember that if you had kiddos, God was blessing you. He favored you. All was well. If you were, for whatever reason, not having kids, you were probably disappointing God in some really profound way, and he was punishing you, and it was disgraceful to not have kids. And so Elizabeth, when she becomes pregnant, she's like, wow, the Lord has taken this disgrace from me. Like she's the chick who everyone is talking about in the tomato aisle at the market, and she's not going to get invited to the next birthday party, and everyone is wondering what her secret sin is. And they're going to be wondering this about Zechariah too, and also why he doesn't leave her and go get a wife that can have a kid, because they always circled back and it was often just looked at on the wife for why there was no kid as a result. And so Zechariah, you really see some profound character in this guy. You really do. He knows he's walked this one out well. He knows his wife, and he knows she's walking this one out well. So this heartache of not having a kid alone would be heartache. For it to then completely readjust your social structure is another level of loneliness and isolation and brokenness from that. And this is what this couple's walking out. And you just want to ask the question, why? Why does God call us to go ahead and walk out hard things? And the truth is, he's got something cool planned for that. And there's hope in that. And that is the infectious hope that we're called to have. Whatever was the big, huge hurdle that you had to get over to get here today, because we all know that they all happen on Sunday morning. I always think that the biggest challenge on a Sunday morning is getting off the front porch. It really is sometimes, because there's 1,000 reasons to stay home, right? Whether they're good or not good, we always have a reason to not get out that door. But if you have a deep hope that God is going to do something with that day, and he's going to do something when you get off that porch, and he's going to do something with the hard things and the hurdles, those hard things and hurdles don't become something that holds us back. They don't hold us back anymore, because there's hope of what God's going to do with it. And so here's Zachariah and Elizabeth trying to walk this one out. However, Zachariah at some point did lose hope. He did lose hope, and we see that in his conversation with Gabriel. So here's a bit. One, total miracle that Zechariah even gets to hold his priestly level, right? If he has no kids, they're going to wonder what his secret sin is, The priests are talking about him and writing things about him on the bathroom wall. It's just socially not good for him. So what a shock when he gets chosen to go into the Holy of Holies. So understand this. This is where our clock begins. This is where we start the countdown of Jesus coming. And we know this, that if there is a priest that's going to enter in to the Holy of Holies to pray for the forgiveness of the people, it is Yom Kippur. It is the Day of Atonement. So here's what this means. This is, of all the Jewish celebrations that take place, all of them are like super fun. There's good food, there's games, there's Bible stories. It's super cool. Yom Kippur is the serious one. This is the one where they actually fast, and they rally the scapegoat, and a priest is going to go through a whole cleansing ritual and go into the Holy of Holies to pray for the forgiveness of the people, that God would forgive them of their sins, that they could go on for another year. And so understand that the temple, there's like these outer courts, and then there's this building, and the front part of the building, the priests all go in, but then there is this mega curtain. And on the other side of the curtain is where the raw presence of God dwells, right? And at this point, the Ark of the Covenant is not back there, but that's where it had been in its day. And Zechariah gets elected by lots to go back there and pray for the forgiveness of the people. What an honor. Like, dude, all the priests are like, what, Zechariah? How do you get picked? You know what I mean? Have you ever felt that way about somebody? Have you ever been the person who got picked and you were like, dude, people aren't happy and thrilled. They're not really happy for me that I got picked. You know what I mean? Well, this is Zechariah. He gets picked. Here's the other thing. To walk in there, you have to make sure that you are like cleansed of your own sin and you are right with God, because if a priest goes in there and goes before the presence of God and their heart's not right, what happens to them? They drop dead, right? And just in case you drop dead, they will fasten a cord to your ankle so they can like pull your body out. Isn't that crazy? Crazy. So could you imagine being Zechariah? You're like, oh my goodness, I got picked. Everyone thinks I must have some kind of crazy secret sin because we don't have kids. It's a miracle I'm still a priest, but we have walked this one out, and at that point, you can only take so much, right? There's a part for Zechariah. Zechariah gets to be broken. And he gets to feel like God has let him down. He gets to feel this way because he's human, right? And so he's standing there, and that like his buddies are like fastening the cord to his ankle, and then they're like cinching it in, getting it really nice and tight, because they're like, it's nice knowing you, Zechariah. That dude's dead. We're gonna have to make sure that rope is tight so we can pull him out. Are we excited to hear this story today? Yeah, this is context, just so you know. So Zechariah goes in, and he's in there to pray for the forgiveness of the people, only to have this moment where Gabriel shows up. And I personally, for me, I would go in there and be like, I probably am going to die, because I am going to probably at this point believe there is something wrong with me. I do not have God's favor. God's punishing me in some way. I probably deserve all of it. I disappoint him. I don't know how. I don't know why. I've been struggling with it, but I'm probably a big disappointment to God. And so this probably is my last moment. I'm going to go in there and take my last breath and drop dead, because why? Why am I going through hard things, Lord? What? Are you just silent on that subject? Have you ever felt like God was just silent on subject? Like everything seems to be going wrong and God's silent on the subject. And you wonder what's wrong with you and why you don't have his favor. And so in a very human, we have to remember these are like real people. In this moment, he goes inside, and when Gabriel appears, dude, that would freak me out. That would freak me out. You go in there, you light the candles, and then all of a sudden you're praying, and then like there's this like person right there. Who also, by the way, the angels are pretty freaky when you look at how they're like described. When an angel shows up as a man, it's like, then a man showed up in white and blah, 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 blah. And it starts to tell you all these things. It didn't describe what Gabriel looked like, which means he was probably in more of his like pure and freaky form, like what Ezekiel saw and Isaiah saw. I mean, like we're talking like multi-wings, oxen heads, eagle heads, the whole 9 yards. Like there is some big, bold, crazy monster angel standing back there. And all I could think is, he's going to swing that sword at me and it's over. This is how I go out. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, he does not, like, no priest had gone back there and had that moment. They hadn't had that moment. So he's back there, and it's the day. It is Yom Kippur, and he's supposed to pray for the sins of the people. And the weirdest thing happens when Gabriel says, hey, God has heard your prayer. God's heard your prayer. And Zechariah is not assuming that it's the prayer for a kid. You know why? That prayer's dead. he hadn't been praying that sucker for a while. The hope was over. The hope's done. Because when Gabriel says, God's heard your prayer, he's not talking about the prayer for the people to be forgiven. He's talking about the other prayer, the prayer that had gone dormant, the prayer that had died, the hope that was gone. The action was over. He was not going to actively pray for this anymore. Because when Gabriel says, you and Elizabeth are going to have a baby, and he already does the gender reveal party, and it's going to be a boy, all happening at once. Yay. Gabriel questions that. He's like, what? Like, you would think that he'd be expecting just that God forgives the people. Like, that's all he's in there for, is that your sins are forgiven. But instead, it's God hears the prayer that was back there, the one that you need to take back up again. Because he's like, what? And then he's really nice because he's like, well, I'm old and my wife is well along in years. Like, don't you love that he is delicate about that? He doesn't call his wife old. Good man. There we go. So, no, you just got to love this guy, right? I mean, he's so good with Elizabeth. So he's like, what? And so he's questioning this now because this would be crazy. This would be nuts. But all of a sudden, for the first time, he's having this confronting of a hope that he dropped, And let's see, I got up and realized that I forgot my glasses. And then I even put this in like mega print, but all right. But have you ever been there though, that like you hoped for something for so long and at some point you just gave up? You just gave up. Here's the thing. You can grab that next slide. There's a difference, you guys, between letting go or moving on. And it's not the same as giving up hope. And I want us to really hear that today. Those are totally different. They are completely different. To let go or move on is not the same as giving up hope. And here's where I will start to struggle with things sometimes. And that is where I'm like, okay, God, if you're not moving in this way, maybe I'm not in hope. I'm not hoping in something that aligns with you. I'm not hoping in something that aligns with you and aligns with your heart. And so maybe I need to give up. And so sometimes there are things that like we might think are a little goofy, like whatever you're hoping is under the tree. Does God really hope that you get that Lego set? Like, is that, like sometimes there's those more simpler things, but then then the Lego set's not there and you're like, I'm going to give up, or I'm going to like let that one go. But giving up is a totally different kind of thing than just letting it go or moving on. And this is the difference here, is that when there's something in your heart that you have really hoped for God to move in some really incredible way, and he's not accomplishing it the way you want and in the time frame you want for him to move, that's when sometimes we just give up and decide that it'll never happen. I'm going to just give it up, instead of just letting go and moving on from how we want it accomplished and the timing we want it accomplished. So letting go and moving on isn't giving up hope. It's saying, okay, God, what I'm hoping in, does it align with your heart? That is the big question to ask. When you look at the things that you're hoping for in your life, do they align with the heart of God? If the answer is yes to that, yeah, this aligns with the heart of God. Like, I really hope for, and from an extravagant thing to a small thing, hoping for wars to end, hoping for people to be fed, hoping for people to be provided for, hoping for people to find their way out of the darkest place of their life. Are you hoping for that? Because God hopes for that too. And sometimes we really hope for a specific person even. And when God's not accomplishing it in the way we want and the timing we want, sometimes we can get bitter and we can give up. And God's like, why would you give up on that? My heart's with you. You're like me in that. I'm like you in that. Like, we have this in common. Continue, you guys, to hope in those things and evaluate if maybe you just have to say, I hope for this, Lord, but I'm letting go that you accomplish it in the way I want. And I'm moving on from the timing in which I'm expecting it. I find this conversation happening constantly. I'm going to get a little emotional about this, but this constant conversation, especially with like kids in their 20s. I mean, think about it. You know why everybody grieves when they turn 30? Because when you're a kid, everything you think you're going to accomplish in your life, you picture yourself in your 20s. You don't picture anything past the age of 30 when you're growing up, right? I mean, if you've seen Friends, there's the one when they all turn 30 and like Joey's like spilling over because, no, Lord, don't take Rachel. She's 30 now. You know what I mean? Like we have this crazy idea that nothing happens after 30. And so, my boys are all in their 20s and their lives are not working out the way they want. They're not working out the way they want. It's not happening in the way that they're going. And some of you guys I've shared. So Chancel, who he's Korean, he's been in the U.S. for 8 years. He started in 8th grade, went through high school, got his high school diploma, his 2-year degree. He's finishing his bachelor's in business this week, and he's halfway through his master's degree. And the way his student visa is working out, he's going to have to go back to Korea and have to try to finish his he's already enrolled in another college to do one more year to get that master's degree completed, but he's going to have to go back. And he has walked this one out and done everything right the whole way. But his dad fell into a coma. His dad has fallen into a coma and has not come out of it in 6 months. And so his visa is revoked because his dad doesn't have a monthly income. And so he's going back and he can't do anything to fix it. Meanwhile, the grief over what's going on with his dad. And for him to go back, he got a great job too while he's finishing school. But he's had to sign a 5-year contract to work in Korea. And here's this kid who has been here for 8 years and he's going to go back to Korea for 5. And when he first told me, like, I could hear in his voice this despair. And all I wanted to do was take it away. And I can't. And then you have that moment when you know that you are powerless. And God likes to remind us sometimes that we are powerless, but he can empower us, right? So anyways, I'm wanting to solve this, but I can't. And then Chancel calls a couple days later, and you can hear in his voice this peace. Like, you know, when you hear your kid's voice, when they're despairing, and you know when you hear in your kid's voice that now they're okay. Because he has made peace with going back for 5 years. And that you don't know what's going to happen in those 5 years. And he might have a chance to come back and be transferred to work in the US. We don't know. But there was peace in his voice. And when I heard the peace in Chancel's voice, I got that peace. Like, I knew it was going to be okay. Because there's this thing where it's like, okay, Lord, then I'm going to let go of this master plan of him carrying on, finishing his master's, going on to his doctorate, getting his job, and living happily ever after, the life he was hoping for in America. Going through the green card process, doing all of the things legally, letting go of that. We're moving on from that. There's peace in his voice. And so I still have the hope that this all will be accomplished, but it's just not going to happen in the time frame and way in which we'd always thought. And that's okay. That's okay. So sometimes we get really hung up on the details of how we want God to move. I mean, think about it. If you were Zechariah and Elizabeth, think about how you were just really expecting God to move the way you wanted, and he wasn't. And you realized you were powerless in the situation. Like, they were powerless in the situation. They couldn't do anything about it. And somewhere in the middle of that, Zechariah's hope died because he stopped the action of really praying and hoping for this, to where he questions Gabriel and he's like, dude, no, God's heard that prayer. He's all over that prayer because he knows the hope behind it. Like, his desire for a kid wasn't selfish. His desire for a kid he was already someone who wanted to make a difference in the world. And would have wanted his own kid to do that too, which is why Gabriel fronts this whole thing like, dude, your kid's going to be so cool. People are going to be ecstatic when he's born, and he's going to make the biggest impact ever. It's going to be incredible. And you're going to name him John, and he's going to make a way for the Messiah. It's going to be super, super cool. And so when Gabriel is imparting all of this stuff about John, which is reflected in the book of Isaiah, there had a bit of part, he was like, that was what I really hoped for. Like my heart really hoped for that. And if you've hoped for your kids, you know what that's like, to really hope for that. And so it's okay to grab onto the hope. And maybe you need to take that back up again. Maybe that hope maybe there's a prayer you gave up on. And it's time to pick it back up and say, okay, Lord, I'm going to soldier on with this hope. And I'm going to let go of how I wanted to control it. I'm going to move on from how the way I wanted it to happen really was being fueled by fear. Think about that. The way we want things to work out, usually if you stripped it down, it's seen as some kind of fear. Like it had to work this way because, and there's some underlining fear for why your plan would work the way you were. And God's like, okay, but what if I accomplished that and you had no fear? What if I accomplished that and it was all in my own power and timing? How cool would that be? And when I move, it's not just for you, it is for everyone, because that's what this child was. John was to prepare everyone for this coming of Jesus. How cool is that? He does question, because he's human. And I love starting the Advent season off with that measure of conviction about it. Like, okay, Lord, all right, I've lost hope in things. And I quit and I gave up. But Lord, today I take it back up. But this time when I hope, Lord, may it be pure, may it align with your heart, and may I let go and move on for the way in which I expected it to happen. Because sometimes we feel like when God doesn't move the way we want, he's betrayed us in some way. God is not a betrayer. He's really not. So sometimes we give up because we're just sick and tired of being disappointed. So I want you guys to think about that. Consider the year that you've had. What's been deeply disappointing? Right? What's been deeply disappointing this year? I've had disappointments this year. It kind of happens. Or maybe you just had the best year ever. I do kind of hope that really was it, and next year's even better. But let's be real. There's disappointments that have taken place. Prayers you stopped praying. What were prayers you stopped praying this year? And what prayers have you not even had the courage to start praying? Are there prayers you just haven't even started to pray because you're like, I'm not even going to ask for that. It wouldn't fit under a tree. I'm not even going to ask for that because the disappointment would just make me sick. So I'm not even going to ask, Lord. What are those prayers? What are those? So how many of you guys have heard of the Wailing Wall? Yeah. So in Israel, this is the temple. I've gotten to go twice here. And so you see this wall with a crowd of people there. That wall, and it's got all the plants growing out of it, and it's old, right? That wall is the oldest part that's still standing of the temple from the time of Jesus. So if you know anything about your Middle Eastern history and Jerusalem, there's been a lot of like overtaking and wars and people tearing down parts and rebuilding parts and tearing down parts and rebuilding parts, and it's changed hands with nations many, many, many times. Okay, but the oldest remaining part from the time of Jesus is this one wall. And so this one wall has become really, really important to the Jewish people. And so they have this practice, you can grab that next slide, where people go to pray. And it's really called the Western Wall, but it's turned into the nickname the Wailing Wall, because sometimes all people can do that when they pray, they don't even have words at that point. They're so broken. Have you ever been like you so grieved you didn't have words? and you just needed God to pray for you. God speaks that language. He does. And so this wall became known as the Wailing Wall. And there's a section where the men can go to pray at the wall, and then there's a section where the women, they're separated. There's a smaller section for the women to go pray at the wall. And you can see that in the cracks of the wall, they're like, what is that in the cracks? You can grab that next slide. In the cracks of the wall are little papers. And those little papers are prayers. And so people don't just come up and they touch the wall and pray, but they will write their prayers out and fold them up and cram them into the cracks of the wall so that their prayer remains when they go. That hope still is living in that wall. Now, what happens when the wall gets full? Once a year, the rabbis go out and the rabbis clean the cracks out, but they don't throw a single prayer away. What they do actually is they put them into these like canisters and they bury them up on the Mount of Olives. So every single prayer has made its way to where Jesus gathered to pray on the night he was betrayed. Isn't that beautiful? That's where their prayers will go. And so today, when you came in, you were, and if you didn't do this, you have time to go do this now. But you picked an ornament that has an old-fashioned luggage tag on it. And you see that this tree's looking a little sad. It doesn't have much going on it. And so this tree throughout the Advent season is our wailing wall. It's our prayer wall. And so as we roll into our last worship song, I'll pray and we'll roll into our last worship song. Hopefully our worship leader, I'm just expecting her to appear from that side, begins to pray. Take a moment and write. And obviously, y'all don't read each other's prayers, okay? And I'm not going to be in here reading all the prayers on the tree. You're like, yeah, right, here. They're all going to be out there for us to see. If you're really like, oh my goodness, I'm just going to fold this sucker up. That's fine too. I'm not going to snoop on your tree and look at your prayer wall tags. But maybe it's time to take up some prayers that you've stopped to pray. You've stopped praying. And God's like, why did you stop that prayer? That was my favorite one. My heart was with you in that. I'm moving on it. Maybe not in your time and in your way, but I'm moving on it. So, what is Jesus asking you to make room in your heart for this Advent season? Right? Sometimes our hearts are full of the disappointment, and our hearts are full of different places of fear, and we've let disappointment and fear dictate our prayer life. And God's like, let's put that aside. Let's make room. Let's make room for hope again, and what I'm about to do with this next year to come even, and how he's going to use all the things still. Because you never know if you're that detectorist out there that when it beeps, this is the big one, right? This is it. God is holding on to our hearts, and he does not hold to crush them. So as we roll into our last worship song, feel free to write a prayer, code your message, whatever it be. But come forward and hang your prayer on the tree.